Hello, ladies and gentlemen. I am O'Brien McMahon, and this is People Business. In this episode, I am joined by Dr. Yosi Amram. Yosi is a licensed clinical psychologist, a CEO leadership coach, and an award-winning author. Previously the founder and CEO of 2 companies that he led through successful IPOs, Yosi has coached over 100 CEOs, many of whom have built companies with thousands of employees and revenues in the billions. With engineering degrees from MIT, an MBA from Harvard, and a PhD in psychology from Sophia University, he is a pioneering researcher in the field of spiritual intelligence, and his research has received over 1,000 citations. As the author of Spiritually Intelligent Leadership, How to Inspire by Being Inspired, Yosi is committed to awakening greater spiritual intelligence in himself and in the world. And that is what we dive into in this conversation, the concept of spiritual intelligence, what it is, what the different components are, and then we break out some of those components and talk about how to build it in each of us throughout our day-to-day lives. Because it's one thing to want to be a certain way. It is another thing to put the rubber to the road and actually practice it and build it in ourselves. And Yosi talks about how we can do that and become a more spiritually intelligent person. And we talk about how this has actually proven out in his research to be impactful for success. So this isn't just, can we be spiritual and feel good about our lives? It's how does being spiritual and feeling good about our lives impact our ability to be even more successful and enjoy our lives even more? And the same for our teams and all of the people that we surround ourselves with. It was a really fun conversation. I hope you enjoy it. Here is Yosi Amram. Yosi, welcome to the show. Excited to have you on. This is a different topic than anything that we've talked about on here before today. And so excited to understand what spiritual intelligence is.
Thank you. Thank you, Brian. I'm excited to share with you, and thank you for the opportunity.
So oftentimes I like to start by kind of like establishing some definitions and let's just like lay the foundation here. What is the difference between spirituality and spiritual intelligence?
Okay, that's great. So it would be, simply stated, it would be the difference between emotionality and emotional intelligence. So if I asked, did you know someone in your life who is emotional? You might think of someone. And then I say, do you know someone in your life who's emotionally intelligent? Are they the same person or are they very different?
Interesting. Yeah, you would think, the person who's very emotional may not be as emotionally intelligent.
So first, okay, so this is just kind of to differentiate between spirituality and spiritual intelligence, but let me get a little more specific. What is spirituality? In general, spirituality is the interest and connection to the deeper layers of meaning, the sacred and the transcendent dimensions of life. And spiritual intelligence, on the other hand, is the ability to embody and draw on spiritual resources and qualities in daily life to enhance functioning and well-being. So you might say, what are these spiritual resources and qualities? So these would be things like purpose and service and compassion, integrity, humility, and so on. These are qualities that have been hailed by all the world's spiritual and wisdom traditions through millennia. And now positive psychology, through research, has highlighted that these very same qualities contribute to our well-being and functioning in daily life. So in that regard, spiritual intelligence is different than spirituality, in that spirituality, you might have an experience, you might have a belief, I believe in God or higher power or reincarnation of the soul, or I might pray, or I might have a certain practice. I may have an experience. I'm walking out in the woods and I feel oneness, or, whatever. I'm communicating with some beings. Those would be all considered spiritual experiences or beliefs. But spiritual intelligence is the ability to embody these qualities in daily life when I'm driving on the freeway, where I'm in line in the supermarket, when I'm interacting with my colleagues or my boss at work, when I'm interacting with my partner in a relationship. So how did those qualities get expressed in our daily life is what spiritual intelligence
Got
is.
it. So if I say that back to you, so your initial analogy, because I think I maybe set people in the wrong mindset where somebody who is very emotional may not be very emotionally intelligent. But I think the way I'm hearing you say this now is emotion is a thing we all have. Emotional intelligence is being able to use that thing in a productive way. Spirituality is something that many people feel. Spiritual intelligence is being able to use the elements of spirituality in their day-to-day lives so that it's not just,
in a way
I believe these things. They're not just beliefs. They're not just, I would like to be this way. It's how do you actually use those key values in your life?
Yeah, and embody them and express them in a way that helps you and those around you.
Okay, so I know from our conversation and your bio that you have a military background. You've been CEO of a couple different organizations, a couple different companies. How do you land on spiritual intelligence as the next stage in your career path? Like, where did this come from? Have you always been a spiritual person? And if so, or if not, how did you land to do this kind of work?
Okay, well, you kind of touched on a couple of things. So I'll if I may, I'll go back and talk a little bit about my life story. Hopefully it won't take the whole hour just from my year and a half of being on this planet. I'm just kidding. It's been a lot more than that. But anyway, I started in the Israeli military as all men get drafted there. And even though I was a pacifist, I was drafted and served 3 years. Luckily, it was a peaceful time. And I was kind of a shy, introverted kid, but I was surprised to find myself rising, had the fastest promotion record in the history of my regiment and won all these leadership awards. But even though I excelled at it, the command and control model of the military, which is effective in battle, chafed at my soul. And I was interested in how you organize people and lead people based on more humane values that bring out the best in them. So that kind of was the impetus for me to someday want to build an organization and drove me to be an entrepreneur. And I started a couple of tech companies. I took both of them public. But I was so driven and focused on my work and the company I built that I burnt myself out. I was working 70, 80 hours a week. We were doing personal newspapers originally on fax. You'd get O'Brien's morning newspaper with the software learning agents picking the stories for you. This is well before the internet. I don't know if you remember fax machines. And then the internet came and it was a huge threat to our business model and so on. So I got depressed. I got burnt out. But somehow I persevered and sustained myself. Then the internet came and we were a rising hot company going public. But through it all, I had what's called a spiritual awakening that was kind of spontaneous, where normally we experience ourselves as separate, like you're an object, I'm an object, everything is made of separate objects. But in this spiritual experience that I had, I kind of saw through our interconnectedness. And that kind of blew the circuits of my mind and actually threw me into a manic episode, if I may say, which feels vulnerable, but I think it's important to name that. And so for years, but then I kind of worked through it. I got pushed out of the company as a result of that, which was very traumatic. But I tried to understand what this whole thing was about. And so as I was starting to invest in and mentor and coach other entrepreneurs and CEOs, I wanted deeper tools to work with them. And I wanted to understand myself. So that drove me to go and get a PhD and become a clinical psychologist. And I had known about emotional intelligence and all the research that was done that showed that emotional intelligence helps our functioning in many domains, and particularly in the domain of leadership. And then I heard this term spiritual intelligence, and I was like, wow, that would be very interesting. What is that? And so I started studying it, both to understand myself, what had happened to me, and is this a real thing, and can it contribute to our lives? And that kind of led me on a long journey of researching this, that as a word or a concept that was introduced before me by this woman called Dana Zohar in a book called Rewiring the Corporate Brain. But it wasn't operationalized, and there wasn't the research to define it and measure it and show that it indeed contributes to these domains. And that's what I set out to do. And now, 15 plus years later, there's over 1,000 citations of my research, and there's all this scientific basis that says, spiritual intelligence is real, it's measurable, and it's positively impactful. People with higher spiritual intelligence have greater satisfaction with life, greater quality, better individual productivity, better leadership, better organizational performance. And this is after controlling for emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence is valuable on its own, spiritual intelligence value on its own, but combined, they have a multiplicative synergistic effect. And even though they have some small correlation, they're actually distinct. So that was a long spiel.
It's a fascinating story. So I appreciate you being vulnerable and sharing the manic episode. If I can, I'd be curious just to lean into that a little bit. Would you be willing to share what that experience was, what had caused that, and sort of what that manicness looked like? Like, how did that manifest? I don't know that I'm familiar with what that would look like.
Yeah, no, it's good. I appreciate you asking. The reason I'm sharing this is that I think there's a lot of stigma in our culture, in our world around mental illness and these kinds of things, and people hide that, which creates more shame and more isolation, which makes their situation worse. So part of my thing is to normalize some of this, that say, hey, this happens to people, and it's not like, they're bad people or whatever. Hopefully nobody thinks I'm bad or crazy or whatever. Maybe I am. So I don't exactly know what caused it. As I said, it was this spiritual awakening that broke through my experience or perspective of separate me and separate you, and we're all objects competing in a dog-eat-dog world in a jungle. And there was this sense of interconnectedness.
Did that happen just in a flash? Like, was it just, oh my God, I got hit by this one time? Or was it like a growing sense and all of a sudden you just couldn't ignore it anymore? Like, how did that feeling come to be?
Okay, that's a good question. So I had been interested in this thing called the mind-body problem in philosophy, which is what is the relationship between subjective experience, or what we call consciousness, and material physical reality, the body. So, I'd been kind of contemplating a lot of these things and reading and studying and so on. But what had happened in a flash. I was lying on a massage table, and I was just stressed out. I was a CEO. I mean, it was a public company where I was traveling all over. We had all these initiatives with the beginning of the internet, and just trying to relax. And then as I relaxed and felt into the experience of my body, I realized that the body and the consciousness are not two separate things, that the experience of the body is the consciousness. And then when I opened my eyes and I looked at the floor through the face cradle, if you can imagine, I felt like the floor was in me. It wasn't separate from me. It wasn't like something out there. So there was this experience of everything is made of consciousness and is interconnected, and I am part of this greater whole. And, it was kind of a radical shift in consciousness, which kind of blew my circuits, if I may say. And so that led to kind of what I'm calling a manic episode. And the way that showed up is, one is my mind was creating a lot of connection between different interests. I was having a lot of insights. I saw insights about where the internet was going, and I wanted to do all these initiatives. And this is in 96, well before Facebook and even Google. And I saw that the kinds of things that they were going to do was the future of the internet. And I was trying to drive my company to be the leader in that domain. But I was so consumed by that vision, and I felt it so passionately, but I lost grounding. I had all these racing thoughts and all these different ideas, and I wanted to get my team and my company and my board behind it. But it just was too much, and I wasn't willing to take, no, we need to slow down we can't do all these things, I got ungrounded and I wasn't a good listener. So even though my vision was right on, and years later, the people who pushed me out on the board said, if we had followed your vision, we would have been, one of those top internet companies. But at the time, it was too crazy and far out, and I wasn't articulating exactly how we're going to get there in a way that was grounded and practical. So that's why my board chose to put me on a quote-unquote voluntary leave of absence. They passed a resolution that says, we're going to put you on a voluntary leave of absence. We want you to go take a break, and then maybe you can come back, and this is just too much. But, I wasn't willing to take the leave of absence. I resigned and became a big fiasco. Our stock price cut in half. There were stories in the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, that, I was very embarrassed.
So I'm curious about this because a lot of people are religious or identify as spiritual in some way. And there are these elements of religion and of spirituality that people want to connect to and often feel an urge to be connected to, but maybe feel like they can't be connected to them because, we're just in this rat race of corporate profit and we're just here and I have my job to do. And yes, that is all very nice, but I have to deal with people every day. And, the world is spinning too fast for me to be able to incorporate that stuff. And often there's maybe a stereotype of somebody who does embrace that and kind of has an experience like you had where it became manic and you were ungrounded, and nobody wants to be that either, right? We all want our place in the hierarchy. We all want our status in the world. So I'm curious, how did you reground yourself after that? Like what was the process for getting back in touch? So because you went on to do a lot of really impactful work. You said that your work has been cited over 1,000 times and it's been validated. And now you're having these conversations all over the place. So the work that you're doing is impactful still. It's very grounded now. How did you find the balance, and how would you suggest other people who want to start to integrate this stuff do it in a way that still feels grounded and balanced?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So let me just you said a number of things, if I could pick on them. Sure. So one is religion and spirituality. Those two are quite different. I talked about the spiritual themes around search for deeper meaning, connection to the sacred and transcendent dimension. Those are the themes of spirituality, which tends to be more of an individualistic thing. Religion takes those themes and brings them into an institutional setting with a creed or a dogma or what have you, with certain beliefs. And the problem with religion, while it's very beautiful and it brought maybe a lot of good things into the world, it's also caused so much trauma and wars and so on. So a lot of people are very skeptical about religion. They may be spiritual, but not religious. And then there's this whole question about the separation of church and state, or, your religion you can practice at home, but then how does this come into your work? So, what I'm talking about is not religion, and it's not, again, it's the embodiment of these qualities. Yeah. So the key thing is, we all know that people that have a greater sense of purpose and passion for it are radiant and enthusiastic, and they make good leaders, and people are drawn to them. So, you don't have to believe in any spiritual or religious belief to be passionately engaged with a sense of purpose or a sense of calling that gives your life a deeper meaning. So for me, it's a long process cultivating our spiritual intelligence. It's a multidimensional construct. Just like IQ, we think IQ is one thing, but reality, IQ consists of many kinds of intelligence. There's verbal comprehension, there's verbal, writing, there's spatial reasoning, there's mathematical logical reasoning, there's memory, and so on. I forget all the components of what constitutes into an IQ score. So in spiritual intelligence, through my research, I identified these 22 qualities, and I've mentioned some of them. So you can't go after all of them. You have to cultivate them, and it's your workout. If you want to be in good shape, you have different muscle groups in your body, and you go to the gym and you practice certain things, and you do it gradually, and you build trust, and you build those muscles. So I think the same with spiritual intelligence. The thing is to understand is that all of these qualities naturally arise when we connect to our life force, to our, what I would call our spirit essence, which is the word spirit. And what is the core word of spirituality? It comes from the root word of spirit, and spirit is from Latin, the animating breath of life. So, we all know we have life force in us, and we can feel it through our breath. We can feel it through our pulse. So when we connect to that, we're connecting to ourselves. And then from there, these qualities start to emerge, and our spiritual intelligence is ultimately the highest and deepest expression of our life force energy. So this is a little bit of a background, but so we need practices that get us grounded and centered, and whether it's meditation or walking in nature, forest bathing, there's all kinds of things that they can do. So, but this is all very practical. I mean, there was a study by Bain & Company, one of the top management consulting companies in the world, and they studied like 1,500 or 2,000 companies to look at what qualities made for inspiring leadership. And what they found is that, first of all, that inspired employees are twice as productive as people who are just doing their job to earn a paycheck. So when we're inspired, then we're enlivened, we're passionate, we're empowered, we bring all of ourselves into it, and we're aligned behind what we're doing. And that's so much more fulfilling. So inspiring leaders have followers that are twice as productive. And what were the qualities? They identified 33 qualities that inspiring leaders have. And most of those, or over half of them, map directly to the spiritual intelligence qualities that came out in my research. Showed those leaders were service-oriented, they were present, they were good listeners, they had a vision, they had a sense of purpose, they were humble, and so on. They were centered, they were grounded. This is all very practical, is what I'm trying to say. I've coached over 100 CEOs also in my coaching, and a number of them have built companies with billions of dollars in revenues and thousands of employees. 3 or 4 of them have become billionaires. So, I mean, this isn't just
this isn't just woo-woo stuff. So let's talk about where people start, right? All right, we got to go to the spiritual gym here. Start pumping those spirit weights. Where do we start, right? How do we know which ones to pick? And once we pick them, how do we start getting our reps in?
First, we have to connect to our intention, if that's our intention. Like everything starts with an intention and aim and aspiration. So one of the things, like if you're a leader of a company or a business, you have to have a vision, right? One of the core qualities of leadership is a vision. So as I like to say, we're all CEOs of our own lives. We have to take responsibility for our lives. And as the CEOs, as the leaders of our own lives, we have to have a vision of where we're going. So one of the things I like to get people to start with is to say, what is the self I aspire to be in 5-10 years from now? And I want to be. And so pick the 3 or 4 qualities that are most important to you. I want to be compassionate. I want to be grounded. I want to be centered. I want to be whatever these are. Grateful type of person. I want to be a joyful person. So then we create an image of ourselves 5-10 years out, and that becomes our guiding light, our North Star of where we're going. And then we start practicing towards those qualities. So we pick one and say gratitude. Okay, one of the things I want to be is a grateful person. So for a month, we build a habit of a gratitude practice. When we wake up or when we go to sleep, we practice gratitude. We have a journal, or we think of 3-5 things that happened to us during the day that we're grateful for. And we build the gratitude muscle. And then we go through our days looking for opportunities to be grateful and notice and appreciate other people. So we kind of build that gratitude muscle, and we keep doing it. But that's one of our habits. Then we say, okay, what's the next thing I want to work on is joy. Okay, how do I bring more joy in my life? Okay, what do I enjoy? I enjoy dancing. I enjoy, going in the forest. I enjoy listening to comedy. I enjoy bandering around with people and joking around, whatever. Okay, let me be more conscious of bringing more joy into my life. And then for next month, we focus on the quality of joy and so on. And so we take these qualities and our future image of who we want to be, and then we start working towards that.
So that makes sense. I'm going to play devil's advocate here for a little bit.
Please.
So what if I look out to the next 5 years and I go, I want to make more money. I want to be higher on the corporate ladder than I am right now, right? I want to have jumped 2 levels, be a senior, fill in the blank. That doesn't necessarily tie to I want to be a grateful person or I want to be a more joyful person. I still could hear somebody having a voice in their head that goes like, yeah, that's fine. That's nice. But like, I don't have time for being a joyful person right now. Or like, I'll be grateful when I get the money. So you had said, these are tangible things that actually make leaders more successful, make teams more successful. If somebody's having a hard time embracing spirituality in the first place, like embracing these values in the first place, how do you help them tie these things back to achieving those goals and figuring out where they need to start?
Well, yeah, so you want to be successful. You want to get 2 levels up in your organization. You want to make more money. Great. I'm not saying, those are, basic human things. The question I would be asking, what if you had more money and you had higher, what would that give you? What would be important about it? Oh, I'd feel a sense of value and worth about myself. And so what would that give me? That would give me, more satisfaction, more gratitude about my life, etc. What I've seen though, when people focus on just getting that 2 promotions or more money, is that then what's the next thing? We need something to give our lives meaning and purpose. So I think what I would do is unpack what about those things are important, and then understanding that practicing gratitude and practicing joy will help you get that promotion, because you will be a better person. People will be drawn to you. You'll be more effective at work. People will see your natural leadership abilities and gravitate to you. So, that's just the way it works. It's mutually reinforcing. As you practice these qualities, you become more successful. Then you're more grateful and more joyful. And just to pick those 2.
Is there an element of this too that's kind of like prepare for the role you want, not the role you have? I want to be a leader in the organization. Okay, well, what makes a good leader? What makes a good leader is being humble, being truthful, having wisdom. So integrity. So I know that that's what makes a good leader. I know I want to be a leader. So I'm going to start to implement those things now as if I were that leader, sort of act as if.
Yeah, they said that there was an old adage, if you want to be a partner at McKinsey, when I was in business school many years ago, and McKinsey was the top place people would want to go. If you want to be a partner, act like a partner. It's kind of like, but you do this in sports, right? You visualize. If you want to, play tennis, and right now there's the Olympics and all of that, all the athletes visualize that which they're trying to do. They're visualizing the serve. They're visualizing the perfect gymnastics routine. And then they're kind of getting the wiring, the brain pathways laid out, and they're traveling on it through their imagination. And then when they're actually doing the routine, it's that much more easy because we've kind of traveled that pathway in our brain. So same thing, if you want to be that leader with integrity, with humility, with confidence, then you want to build those pathways, those muscles, so then you naturally are that. And then those things start to express themselves naturally, and people are drawn to you and say, oh, so-and-so is a natural leader. They're visionary. They're high integrity. They draw people in, so on.
Yeah, like the team that wins the Super Bowl doesn't start acting like a Super Bowl champion after they win. They've been acting like it before they win, and that's what makes them the champion.
Exactly.
So I'd love to break down some of the pieces of this, and I'd love to start with purpose. This is a word that I have struggled with for a long time, and I think a lot of people do struggle with this one. And I think there's been, this is going to be the bad term, but I'm going to call it like purpose shaming that goes on, or at least this like social media infused projection that if you are not working towards your ultimate purpose, that your life is meaningless or aimless or like somehow lesser than. And my wife is a professional ballet dancer, and that is all she's ever wanted. She was so gung-ho on that one purpose. And I graduated college and was like, what am I going to do when I grow up? I've been doing what I do for 15 years now, and I still ask myself, what am I going to do when I grow up? And I've spent a lot of time thinking about purpose, and sometimes it's great and it's helpful and it can point me in a direction, but sometimes I can just sort of feel down, like, man, I don't think there is one purpose for my life. How would you help someone like me make sense of this and think about purpose in a way that's aligned with spiritual intelligence?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'll speculate here with you, but it sounds to me like you're a person of many interests and curiosity. Yes. So that's one of your superpowers or talents. And actually, you're practicing those skills and talents in this podcast and the work you're doing. So maybe your purpose is to learn and grow, and it looks very different than your wife, who's single-mindedly focused on being the best ballet dancer. But you are a podcaster, and you bring your curiosity and interest in learning, and you spread that to other people. And that's maybe your purpose is related to that. So I think in general, our purpose is, comes out of one, identifying what are our gifts, talents, and superpowers. We're one of 8 billion people on this planet, and we're unique in the whole history of the universe, 14 billion years. There was never another human beings or creature or being like O'Brien, and there never will be. So life kind of endowed you with certain gifts, certain talents. And when you give someone a gift or you receive a gift, you want them to use it, right? Have you ever given someone a gift and you then found out, oh, they never even opened it, they don't use it? It's like, oh, shoot, what did I give that to them? So life has given us a certain set of gifts. So effectively, life wants us, inviting us to use these gifts to actualize them. And so first is to identify our gifts. Secondly is when we use our gifts, then we're actualizing ourselves. And when we use them in service of others, that gives us the greatest fulfillment, because we're helping others, we're helping ourselves, we're actualizing ourselves. So for each person, it's different. Your wife has maybe physical gifts, maybe she loves beauty and so on. And that all comes in expression in ballet. For you, maybe it's coming through in your curiosity and ability to relate to people and interview people and interact with people, like you're doing with me right now. And that's your gifts. Hopefully your audience and everybody listening says, oh yeah, I like how O'Brien is real, and he's asking meaningful questions, and he plays devil's advocate, and he's not just bullshitting me,
Yeah. Well, so one thing, I appreciate that. Thank you, first of all. There seems to be an inherent element in that, though, where you got to do stuff first. I don't know that anybody just wakes up as a kid and goes like, I love ballet, like in my wife's case, right? Like she didn't know that. She figured it out by doing ballet and loving it, and then doing a bunch of other things and not loving it as much as she loved ballet. And similarly, like I've tried 1,000 things, and that's how I know that I like trying things. Like I have a good buddy who makes fun of me all the time because I'll be like, hey, I'm trying this new thing. He's like, yeah, of course you are. But it took me a long time of doing that and feeling guilty that I was always trying new things and couldn't pin one thing down to realize, oh, no, this trying is the thing. It's the experiencing that I like, and the collection of wisdom and perspective. That's what I really like. But you can't know that unless you're out and you're really engaged in the world. So I think the first step is just to get out there and just expose yourself to as much as possible.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And that also can shift, at a certain age. Your wife right now is focused on being a ballet person. I don't know how many more years that would hold passion for her. I mean, maybe.
Well, she's already transitioned because she hasn't danced for a couple of years, and she's been at home with our 2 boys, and so she's transitioned to mom, and that's her purpose right now.
Okay, yeah. So, I mean, there's no reason to think that what our purpose and what gives us meaning. Obviously, what gave us purpose and meaning when we were 5-years old was to learn how to ride the bike and tie our shoelaces on our own. And that's different than when we're teenagers and we're trying to belong in groups. And then we're in our 20s, we're looking for our first jobs. And then we're trying to build a family and so on. I mean, it just... what gives meaning and direction to our life changes over time as we learn and grow and shift. So I think that's healthy, part of making life an adventure. But for some people, it's the same thing that extends over 20, 30, 50 years. They always wanted to be a medical researcher since their 20s, and they're still doing it in their 70s. Beautiful. Yeah. Someone else is like, I did the take entrepreneurship for 15, 20 years. I took 2 companies public. I was like, okay, that's great. I'm good with that. I didn't feel like I need to build a much bigger company. That was good enough for me. And then I wanted to develop these other talents and interests. And who knows, maybe in 15 years, I'll go become a painter or something completely different. Why not?
I love it.
There's many possibilities.
There is. Yeah, for sure. Too many. That's the thing. That's the thing that gets me, is I sit and I see all the possibilities and I want to go do them all. Let's transition to one that I think is kind of related, but inner directedness. Can you explain what that is for people?
Yeah, well, inner directedness is the ability to tune in and follow our own North Star, our own value system, and to live in integrity with that and be comfortable in our own skin. So I'm not always asking other people for approval and what I should do with my life. I mean, I may be open. It's important to be open to other input, but ultimately I am, as I said, the CEO of my own life, and I follow my inner compass. I follow my own North Star, and I live in integrity and alignment with that, while also staying open and connected to other people. So there's a sense of confidence, empowerment, and integrity with one's own authentic self.
How do we build that kind of integrity? Because it's one thing to understand the type of person you want to be. It's another thing to be that person when status or money are on the line, or when we face confrontation. So how do we build that up so that we can really maintain our inner direction and our integrity no matter the obstacle?
Well, again, it's a practice and it's a muscle. So what we pay attention to is how we feel about ourselves and internally when we do different things. And this may sound silly, but just as an experiment to get an embodied sense, you can look around your room wherever you are now. It looks like the stuff is painted white.
Yep.
Okay, so if you look around and you say the wall is painted white, what happens? It just sounds true, right? And how's your breathing and your body?
Relaxed.
And then if you look around and you say the wall is painted red, what happens? Just try it.
Yeah, just something feels off.
Something feels off. And can you notice does your breath stop or like
Yeah,
tighten?
probably stopped. Yeah, I probably paused breathing for a second.
Yeah, because it's something that's so when we're in alignment with the truth, there's ease. There's a sense of inner sense of yes. I mean, this is kind of a silly example, but
it is true. I mean, it does extrapolate out. It's all about like your body keeps the score or any of those types of concepts. Like these things do actually show up in our physicality.
Yeah, I mean, the body has a lot of intelligence. Millions of years of evolution have led the body to have all this intelligence. But my point is that if we start to tune into ourselves, but most people, like I had to help you focus on that. And maybe you're already trained in these things and I didn't reveal anything, but what I find working with my clients is that I have to repeatedly bring them back to sensing themselves and seeing what happens in themselves and sensing what happens when you imagine this future versus that future. What's your sense of aliveness? What's your sense of alignment? What's your sense of relaxation and openness? And is there an inner yes or no? And that's a refined skill to learn to that subtle inner voices and how it shows up through our sense of aliveness and the subtlety of our energy and physiology in the body. So am I tracking?
No, that
answering
makes sense.
your
That makes sense. Another piece of this spiritual intelligence that I found interesting when we were prepping this was community, was something that you had mentioned. I have thought a lot about community since starting this podcast in the pandemic, and I would love to hear just your comment on why community is important and what it means to have a healthy community, like how we should think about engaging with and building a healthy community.
Okay, thanks. I think that's super important in our day and age. So, I mean, first of all, human beings are social animals, and our survival depends on others. I talked about our interconnectedness and interdependence. I mean, I could not survive just on my own. I don't know how to grow the food and build the electricity and all of that. So in our biology and from time immemorial, human beings lived in tribes and families, and they knew that on their own, we don't survive very well in the jungle or whatever, the African savanna. We need to be in community, and that gives us strength and a sense of belonging. So this is kind of wired into our evolutionary heritage. Now, in modern life in the West, we're a very individualistic culture, and post-pandemic, so many people are working remotely. And even before that, there was a growing pandemic of loneliness. The Surgeon General has declared, and there's more and more single adult households. So for people, more and more people, work has become their primary community or environment where they come in contact. We spend over 40 hours a week or however much we work. That's the largest chunk of our waking hours interacting with people around work. And the research shows that people that have a sense of community, have a sense of human connections, are healthier physically, have better mood, more productive, less absentee days at work. And the longest running psychological study that started at Harvard, I forget, over 80 years ago, has gone through many directors, has found that the people that had good human relations and connections had the best health and longevity. And it was as important, more important than smoking, 1 or 2 packs a day. So if you had good human connection, a sense of community and friendships, that compensated for, even if you're a smoker or whatever it was. So It just tells you that this has an amazing, amazing impact on our well-being physiologically and psychologically, and it's so much more important these days. So Let me just say a couple of things. Go ahead if you want to clarify.
Well, so that was great and super helpful. I think what I would be curious on is that this next piece of like, how do we get the reps in for community? What does it actually look like in today's day and age to build community? Oh, I'm a gamer. I plug in and talk to people all the time playing these games. Is that community? Like, how should we think about and how should we practice building community?
Yeah, great. So I'm glad you're kind of leading me here. So to me, what community is like, yeah, you could be online and you could play a game, but there's no personal connection. There's no really shared sense of vision and values. So what makes community is one is a shared sense of vision that we're working towards something together. So we're aligned in our purpose. Let's go back to a purpose that an organization has. It could be at the corporate level. It could be at the team level. We're the customer support group, and we are together trying to provide the best service. Now we're the engineering group, and we're trying to provide the best technology and most innovative products, etc. So it could be a mission at the overall corporate level. It could be at a small team level, whatever. But we have a shared sense of purpose, number one. Number two is we have a shared sense of values, that how we work together. Certain organizations are like, okay, we're here to have fun, or we're here to be creative, or we're here to be a meritocracy. We're here to... So shared purpose, shared values. And then the last and crucial piece is mutuality of care. So if you just have a large group of people, maybe the whole country, we have a shared purpose, but that's not going to, we want to make America great again, or I don't know what. That's not going to be so much of a community until we have mutuality of care. So there's a fabric of human connections, and everybody feels they know each other at a personal level and cares about them. So I'm saying basically there's three important elements to give us a sense of community belonging: shared purpose, shared values, and mutuality of care across the group. And, but that could be at work. It could be in a volunteer organization. It could be in a spiritual community. It could be in a religious community. People have a sense of community at church or whatever. I mean, those are all communities.
Where my head goes when you're talking about that, the mutuality of care is an interesting part of this. We just left on vacation. We went on vacation for a few weeks, and I worked remotely, and we extended the trip. And so I was gone for 3.5 weeks. And my wife had just planted some new flowers in the garden out front, and they were going to die if we didn't get somebody to water them. And so I texted two of our neighbors who have like 9-year-old girls, like right around that age. And I said, hey, would any of them want to make some money and do this for us? And initially I was thinking, oh man, I'm kind of putting them out by asking them to help me do this thing. And sure, I'll pay them, but it's this transaction. And then I was thinking about it, and actually it just reinforced when you said it. Like, I think that kind of asking for help actually builds community. Like, our asking for help builds community. Yes, our giving help builds community, but so does the asking, because now I'm asking you to care for me. We were asking these families to care for our house while we were gone. We were entrusting them. And, similarly, then now if there are ways that we can be helpful to them, we will be. And it's both that give and take, I think, that builds that sense of community. And we oftentimes don't want to ask for help when it is actually that asking that provides some richness to that other person and builds that relationship and connection.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and I'm glad you're highlighting it. When you're asking for help, you're dispelling this idea that we're all independent. You're affirming your need of them, and that affirms their value and ability to contribute. And we all know that when we help other people, we feel good about ourselves. I mean, there's research that, that shows that you give people a lottery and they win $20 or not. So everybody who wins the $20 feels good. And then you take the people who won the $20 and you divide them into two randomly. Some people are told go spend it on yourself and do something you like. The other half are told, go spend it to help someone else. And then when you look at the end of the day, the people that were instructed to spend the $20 on someone else actually feel more content about their day than the people who spend it on themselves. Yeah. So I think we have this impulse to help others. And when we feel we're needed, provided it's not overwhelming, I mean, if I spend the $20 on someone else that I want, I feel good. But if I had to give away 90% of my savings, I may not feel so good. So we have to take care of ourselves. But if we're asking someone for a small thing, like you're saying, hey, will you water the plants while we're away? Then they're like, sure, they're doing something good. They're helping their neighbor, as you said. Now they feel comfortable when they're away. Will you pick up our mail? Will you feed our dog? Will you feed our cat or whatever it is? And so then we feel less isolated and we feel that we're supported by our neighbors, and that starts to build a community. And then the next thing, you might invite them over for tea someday, or you have extra oranges growing on your tree and you can't use them all. You go and you say, hey, we have all these lemons or oranges. Will you guys like some? And they say, sure. Yeah. And then they bring you something, and then it just
keeps getting enmeshed.
Yeah, the bond gets tighter, and there's a feeling like I'm not alone in this world. Yeah.
All right, last one. What is the difference between wisdom and knowledge?
Yeah, good question. So knowledge is just basically the accumulation of information, and you have access to it. You know the speed of light, you know the whatever, your weight, you know. I mean, these are trivial things.
It's data.
But it's data and information. Wisdom is then the ability to apply that knowledge and that information in novel ways using judgment. And sometimes it requires trade-off, like how do you navigate conflicting values? And we want to be wise and we want to be compassionate. And how much helping a homeless person, how much money, giving them money on the street is really compassion? How much of it is wise? And that, that requires a certain level of discernment and wisdom and judgment and maturity. So I hope
you're making a ton of sense. How do we practice that, though?
How do we practice wisdom? Well, we practice.
Just the start word is practicing. Take your knowledge and try to apply it.
It takes. Yeah, you take your knowledge, you try and apply it in tricky situations, and you monitor the impact, and you think about multiple perspectives on it. What was the impact of my actions, and how was it helpful? How was it counterproductive? And it's maturation. I mean, wisdom is not something you gain overnight. It's not just an algorithm. It's a maturation and a refinement of discernment that grows as we are confronted with different challenging situations in life that sharpen our discernment and our wisdom.
Well, and I think it's taking going back to inner directedness, right? It's like taking it upon yourself to apply your knowledge at the risk of failing, because you don't gain wisdom without the risk of failure. And I think that I've seen people struggle to embrace the risk side of building wisdom.
Yeah, the risk of making mistakes, failure, however way you word it. But looking foolish. But, all of that actually, both the inner directedness and the wisdom and the willingness to make mistakes and take risks, rely on another spiritual intelligence quality that we haven't talked about, which is trust. And a basic trust in ourselves and in life. And we develop this trust because all of us human beings have gone through challenges, I imagine, whether it was being laid off from a job or ending a relationship or some physical health issue or diagnosis. And certain times things we feel desperate, we feel depressed, we feel down, life looks gloomy, but we're here right now. You and I interacting. I'm smiling. I see you have a little smile, and we're exploring these ideas, and it's fun. And so we, through whatever challenges I've survived, and as I told you, I was manic, I was depressed, I was pushed out of the company. I mean, these were very challenging moments, but somehow I've survived through it. I'm here. And I made mistakes then, but I've survived, I've learned. So now I have trust in myself, greater trust in myself, greater trust in life, that somehow things are okay and will work out. And so that when I have that sense of trust, I'm willing to be more inner directed, listen to my voice, and know that even if I make a mistake, I'll be okay. And for all the mistakes and everything is a learning opportunity and growth. And so it's that basic trust that allows us to have that inner directedness and to experiment and learn and grow and develop the wisdom.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great place to wrap this up, is trusting yourself and trusting the universe and using that trust to build the rest of these skills. So where can people find more about spiritual intelligence and or engage with you if they want to continue the conversation?
Sure. Thank you. So I have a website. It's like my name, Yosi, Y-O-S-I. Last name is Amram, A-M-R-A-M. 2 M's like Mary. It's one word, yosiamram.net. That's my website. And it leads to several resources, like a website where people can do assessments of spiritual intelligence competencies to get a profile of what their strengths, what their opportunities. I also host, there are links there for free events that I do once a month on awakening spiritual intelligence qualities. So each month we focus on one quality. The next one in a couple of weeks, actually 2 weeks from today, is an event on compassion. And compassion is another spiritual intelligence capacity that's so critical in today's time, given all the suffering and turmoil going on. So anyway, people can register for those events, listen to the recordings. They're free. I also have a YouTube channel. It's at Awakening Spiritual Intelligence, all one word. And there are different meditations and previous classes that I've conducted on these different qualities.
Great.
So,
and we'll link to all those in the show notes, as well as your book and anything else that we've talked about. So if anybody's interested in all of that, just scroll down a little bit. It'll all be there, and encourage people to check it out.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning my book. I forgot about that. So yeah, Spiritually Intelligent Leadership, How to Inspire by Being Inspired, which recently won a gold award. So I'm
Congratulations
by that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Yosi, for coming on the show. And thank you, everybody, for listening. I hope this has been insightful for you. And I hope you can find even just one element of spiritual intelligence to go out and practice for the rest of the day and the rest of the week, because as we've outlined here, it does make a difference. So best of luck.
Thank you, Brian. What a delight.
Hey, folks, one last thing before you go. If you enjoyed the episode, make sure to hit subscribe so you can stay up to date with future guests. That's it. Thanks for coming. Go make the most of your business and the people in it.